The Rebbe starts off the Sikha by saying that we discussed many times how accurate everything in Rashi is, not only the words of his Pirush, but also the Dibur HaMaskal, the words that he quotes from the Pasuk. In our Parsha, in the beginning of the Parsha of the Yomim Tovim, after the Parsha starts off with an introduction saying that Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu to speak to the Bnei Yisrael, that these are the Yomim Tovim, these are Moyadei Hashem, Elehei Moyadoi. The Pasuk goes on and says, Sheishes Yomim, 6 days, work shall be done. On the 7th day is a holy day, a day of Shabbos, work shall not be done. Then the Torah goes on to speak about Eile Moyadei Hashem, these are the Yomim Tovim, and enumerates all the Yomim Tovim. Now Rashi quotes the word Sheishes Yomim and asks, what does Shabbos have anything to do with Yom Tov? Why are we mentioning Shabbos here? It comes to teach you that if someone desecrates Yom Tov, it's as if he desecrates Shabbos. If someone keeps Yom Tov, it's as if he keeps Shabbos. So the Rebbe asks, Rashi is coming seemingly to deal with why Shabbos is mentioned together with Yom Tov. What should have Rashi quoted from the Pasuk? The words, Uvayoyim Hashvi Shabbos. And yet, what is Rashi quoting from the Pasuk? The words Sheishes Yomim. Rashi seemingly is not explaining anything to do with Sheishes Yomim. Now, seemingly you could try to answer and say Sheishes Yomim is the beginning of everything being discussed, or Sheishes Yomim is just a header for the whole beginning of everything we're going to discuss over here. As we do find sometimes is the case, the Rebbe brings some examples. Rashi will quote V'asisa Ephod and describe everything that's going to happen by the Ephod. In a further Rashi right over here in this parsha, regarding the Yomim Tovim, Rashi does a similar thing with Eile Moyadei Hashem. Rashi starts discussing the whole idea of Yom Tov. But the Rebbe says the problem in our case is that Rashi's beginning words have to have at least something to do with what he's about to discuss. Like in the case of Ephod, he is discussing the Ephod. Whereas in Sheishes Yomim, seemingly Rashi is not discussing anything to do with the 6 days at all. He's only discussing Shabbos and how it's related to Yom Tov. Why then is Rashi quoting the words Sheishes Yomim? Another question that Rebbe has is, why is Rashi starting off with the negative? Someone that's desecrating Yom Tov, it's as if he desecrates Shabbos, and then the positive, where seemingly in the pasuk seems mainly to be emphasizing the positive. We need to keep Shabbos, we need to keep Yom Tov. Why would Rashi be focusing on the negative? Now, even though that is the wording in the original source in the Torah Kohanim, but we know already from other places that Rashi is not limited to necessarily be always quoting the words from the original source unless that's relevant to the explanation over here. To explain this, the Rebbe says, is that what actually is bothering Rashi is something else completely. To say why Shabbos is together with the Yom Tovim is not such a question, because Elei Moyadei, these are the special days. It's understood Shabbos is one of those special days that come along together with Yom Tovim. We could also be putting them together because we want to contrast them, show the differences, the similarities, and so on. What Rashi is actually bothered is with the introduction, Sheishes Yomim Te'asa Malacha, 6 days work shall be done. This seems to have no room in our pasuk whatsoever. Because in the first time the Torah tells us about 6 days you should do work, on the 7th day you rest on Shabbos, we can understand why that would say. When the Torah needs to tell us, don't worry about resting on Shabbos because you're going to first do work for 6 days. The Torah is telling us why we rest on Shabbos, because Hashem rested on 6 days, worked on 6 days, rested on Shabbos, so we work on 6 days, we rest on Shabbos. The pasuk can be telling us the idea, as Rashi himself says, that when Shabbos comes, it should be as if all the work that you did in those 6 days, now it's all over, you have nothing to be concerned about anymore. But here in this parsha, it seems to be very strange to start off with the word Sheishes Yomim. The Torah starts off speaking about these are the Yomim Tovim, and then starts telling us that which days, special days do we have? As an introduction, suddenly we say 6 days you should do work, 7th day is Shabbos, and then Yom Tov. Why are we speaking suddenly again about the 6 days? They seem to be irrelevant over here. This is what Rashi is coming to deal with and say, explaining this by telling us there's a reason why Shabbos and Yom Tov are put together, to teach us that if you desecrate Yom Tov, it's as serious as desecrating Shabbos, and this will help us understand why the Torah started off with saying Sheishes Yomim. What does Sheishes Yomim mean? It doesn't say Shisha Yomim. It doesn't say 6 days. Sheishes Yomim means it's a unit, a group of 6 days. That is, the Torah is trying to tell us over here that we have two types of times, two groupings within time. We have Sheishes Yomim, we have the work week, we have the regular days of the week, which we call Sheishes Yomim, this group, this unit of 6 days. and this is a separate kind of time, anything outside of these 6 days automatically is not your work days. Automatically is not days that you should be involved with the mundane, with the work. Those are the Shabbos, those are the Yom Tov days. And in that way, in that context, Shabbos and Yom Tov are exactly the same. Yes, there may be certain differences and details between Shabbos and Yom Tov, but the general idea is that Sheishes Yomim, we have a group of work days, and anything else is outside of that. That automatically tells us that the moment you do work on any other day, added the 6 days, added the regular weekdays, the moment you desecrate any of those days, it's all exactly the same. Shabbos, Yom Tov, it's all the same. That helps us understand why it is that Rashi is, first of all, just quoting the word Sheishes Yomim, because that is what he's coming to answer. What is this concept of this grouping of 6 days? This is what Rashi is telling us. The reason why it's a separate group, that helps us is understood and helps us realize this idea that Shabbos and Yom Tov are all a separate category out of these 6 days. Says the Rebbe, this is also why Rashi starts over the negative, because that's really the whole point that Pasuk is trying to say. The whole point that Pasuk is trying to say is that anytime you're going to do work outside of the given work days that Hashem gave you, automatically it's all going to be in the same category and they're going to be as serious as each other. The Rebbe tells us in Pnimiyus HaTorah, this is a very powerful idea as well. We know that the Chazal tell us that we need to do work during the 6 days. It's actually even considered a mitzvah. We need to get involved in the world. We need to make a keli in derech hateva, and that's when Hashem gives us our bracha. But we need to remember that's only as far as our guf is concerned, our body is concerned. As far as our neshama is concerned, we have nothing to do with the ways of the world at all. We have nothing to do with nature of the world at all. As far as the neshama is concerned, there's no point of getting involved in the world and all the physical things, etc. And as far as the neshama is concerned, that's where we should be involved in the Shabbosdika atmosphere. It is these two extremes that's demanded in the avodah of the Yid. On the one hand, the Torah is telling us, yes, we have that grouping of time, Sheishes Yomim, we are involved in the work, and it's even a mitzvah. On the other hand, we have the ideas of Shabbos and Yom Tov, when by a Yid is shining his neshama. This is the other grouping of time, and therefore, at that point, there is no room for any of the limitations of the world and the guf and so on and so forth. Says the Rebbe, since the neshama is completely higher than guf, higher than golos, eventually it impacts even the guf, that notwithstanding the guf does have certain limitations, nevertheless in it should shine the power of the neshama, which is higher than all the limitations, till finally we get the guf also out of the guf and out of the golos in the literal sense by the geula hamitis v'ashleima de Mashiach tzedkeinu b'kariv mamash.